The courtroom fell silent. Cameras clicked, pen scratched, and all eyes turned to the defendant's table. There, in a seat too big for his small frame, sat a boy, not even old enough to drive, vote, or graduate from high school. Yet, in just a few moments, a judge was about to sentence him to death. The youngest child in U.S. history to face such a punishment. How did a child end up here, facing the ultimate penalty, usually reserved for the most hardened killers? Today, we uncover the chilling story behind this infamous case. This wasn't just another trial. It was a spectacle that drew nationwide attention. Outside the courthouse, protesters held signs, some demanding justice, others begging for mercy. Inside, the air was tense, thick with the weight of history about to be made. Court officers kept extra security on standby because emotions in this trial ran dangerously high. The boy at the center of it all was just 14 years old. His hand shook slightly, but his expression remained unreadable. Some described his stare as empty, others as chilling. He wasn't dressed in a suit like many defendants his age might be. Instead, he wore a simple orange jumpsuit, the uniform of an inmate. The case began with a tragedy that rocked an entire neighborhood. Late one evening, police received frantic calls about a brutal crime. When officers arrived, what they found inside the small suburban home would change everything. A young victim, lifeless. The result of a crime so vicious, it seemed impossible a child could commit it. The evidence pointed directly to the 14-year-old. Prosecutors argued it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a moment of youthful recklessness. It was cold, deliberate, and intentional. They painted him as a killer who showed no remorse. Neighbors were stunned. He was just a quiet kid, one recalled. We never thought he could do something like this. But the reality painted in the courtroom was far darker than anyone could have imagined. When the trial opened, the tension was palpable. The prosecution wasted no time in portraying the boy as a danger to society. They described the crime in chilling detail. Every strike, every calculated move. Their goal was clear. Convince the jury that this wasn't just a troubled teen, but someone beyond redemption. The defense, however, had a very different picture. They pleaded with the jury to see him as a child. They argued his brain wasn't fully developed, that he was influenced by a toxic home environment, and that he didn't understand the consequences of his actions. He is a child who made a terrible mistake, the defense attorney said. Are we really ready to put a child to death? Every seat in the courtroom was filled. Reporters typed frantically on their laptops, knowing every word of testimony would make national headlines. Families of both the victim and the defendant sat just feet apart. One side weeping for their loss, the other side holding on to the faint hope of mercy. Each day of testimony pulled the courtroom deeper into a debate that was as moral as it was legal. Should a child face the death penalty? Some jurors avoided eye contact with the boy as evidence was shown. Others studied him closely, trying to decide if they saw a child who could be rehabilitated or a predator too dangerous to ever be free again. Witnesses painted a haunting picture. Teachers testified about his troubled behavior in school. Psychologists were brought in to explain the science of adolescent brains. And then came the most powerful testimony of all, the victim's family. One parent stood before the court, tears streaming down their face. Their voice cracked as they said, "My child will never see another birthday, never walk across a graduation stage, never grow up, and the one who stole that from us knew exactly what he was doing." The courtroom erupted in emotion. Some cried. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The young defendant stared down at the table, expressionless. After weeks of testimony, the jury returned with a verdict, guilty on all counts. The boy barely flinched as the words were read. The way to what came next, however, was still uncertain. Would the judge sentence a 14-year-old to life in prison, or go further, handing down the most severe punishment of all? The day of sentencing arrived. The courtroom was packed once again, tension so thick it was hard to breathe. The judge entered, robe flowing, and took his seat. The boy stood at the defense table, flanked by his attorneys. He looked smaller than ever, dwarfed by the towering courtroom. His mother wept quietly behind him, begging silently for mercy. And then, with a solemn voice, the judge delivered the ruling. By the power vested in me by the state, I hereby sentence you to death. The words seemed to hang in the air. The room exploded. Some in gasps, some in applause, others in outright screams. The boy's face crumbled. For the first time, his composure shattered. He fell to his knees, sobbing, as deputies rushed to steady him. His mother screamed, collapsing into the arms of relatives. Across the aisle, the victim's family embraced, tears of relief streaming down their faces. The case instantly made headlines worldwide. Debates raged across the nation. Legal experts questioned whether sentencing a child to death crossed a line between justice and vengeance. Human rights groups condemned the decision, calling it barbaric. Others, however, stood firmly by the ruling, saying, "If you're old enough to kill like an adult, you're old enough to be punished like one." The boy was transferred to death row, where he would spend his remaining days waiting for the state to carry out its sentence. His case became a reference point in countless debates about juvenile justice, shaping laws and sparking controversy for years. To this day, the image of a 14-year-old standing in shackles, hearing the word sentence to death, remains one of the most haunting in courtroom history, and it forces us to confront the question: when the justice system delivers its harshest punishment to someone so young, are we protecting society? Or are we crossing a line that can never be undone?